Ellen DeGeneres stopped mid-sentence. Watching the 16-year-old sitting across from her, described cooking with the precision of a trained chef and the passion of someone who had found salvation in a kitchen. Marcus Thompson's hands moved as he spoke, unconsciously mimicking knife cuts and pan tosses, but his eyes held something that broke Ellen's heart, the careful hope of someone who had learned not to expect good things to last. What happened in the next 60 seconds would become more than television. It would become the moment when culinary genius met culinary legend, and the foster care system got a reminder that some dreams are too powerful to contain. Nobody in that Warner Bros. Studio knew they were about to witness something that would change both the culinary world and child welfare advocacy. Not the cameras rolling, not the producers frantically taking notes about this unexpectedly articulate teenager, and certainly not Marcus Thompson, who thought he was just there to talk about the cooking program at his group home, before aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. But Ellen knew. Ellen had been planning this moment for 7 weeks, ever since a viral video had made her call someone whose tough exterior hid the biggest heart in the restaurant industry. The video was shot on a phone in the kitchen of a group home for foster teens. In it, Marcus Thompson, tall for his age, with careful eyes and hands that moved with surprising grace, was preparing dinner for 12 other kids using ingredients from the food pantry. But what made the video go viral wasn't just his obvious skill with a knife or his ability to turn canned goods into something that looked restaurant quality. It was what he said at the end, stirring a pot of what he called family soup. Cooking is the only time I feel like I'm taking care of people instead of being taken care of. When you're in foster care, you're always the one who needs help. But in the kitchen, I can be the one who helps. But this is where the story gets extraordinary. Because Gordon Ramsay had seen that video. Ellen had seen that video. And what they decided to do about it would transform not just Marcus's life, but how America thought about foster care, about untapped potential, about the dreams that thrive even in the most unlikely circumstances. Now, as Marcus sat in that familiar blue chair wearing his best thrift store button-down, the one he'd bought for job interviews that never seemed to lead anywhere, he had no idea that his culinary hero was backstage, equally amazed by this teenager's story and skill. Ellen leaned forward, her characteristic energy focused by genuine curiosity about this young man's journey. Marcus, you've been in foster care since you were 8. That's 8 years, 8 different homes. How did you discover cooking? Marcus straightened slightly, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone who had learned to tell his story without asking for pity. It was actually my 3rd foster home, when I was 10. Miss Rodriguez taught me to make rice and beans because she said if I was going to live there, I needed to contribute. But when I started cooking, something just clicked. It was the first time I felt like I was good at something. The studio audience was already captivated, but Ellen could sense there was more to this story. Tell me about that feeling, about being good at something. Marcus's face lit up slightly, the careful guardedness giving way to genuine passion. In foster care, you're always the kid with problems, the kid who needs fixing, or training, or therapy. But when I cook, I'm not broken. I'm creating something. I'm taking care of people. It's the only time I feel like I have something to give instead of something to take. Ellen felt something break open in her chest. Here was a 16-year-old who had spent half his life being shuffled between homes, talking about giving to others. What's your dream, Marcus? If you could do anything with cooking, what would it be? For the first time in the interview, Marcus hesitated. Ellen could see him wrestling with something internal, the conflict between hope and the hard-learned lesson that dreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. I want to go to culinary school, he said quietly. The Culinary Institute of America. I've watched every video, read every article. I know it costs more money than I'll ever have, and I know kids like me don't usually get those chances. But when I'm cooking, I can picture myself in a real kitchen, with real equipment, learning from real chefs. His voice grew stronger as he continued. I want to open a restaurant someday. Not just any restaurant. A place where foster kids can come and learn to cook, learn skills, learn that they're capable of creating something beautiful. Because if cooking saved me, maybe it can save other kids too. Ellen was studying Marcus's face, seeing something she had rarely encountered, someone who had experienced the system's failures, but responded with a desire to help others within it. Marcus, you age out of foster care in 2 years. What happens then? The careful hope in Marcus's eyes dimmed slightly. I'll get a job, probably in a kitchen somewhere. Prep cook, dishwasher, whatever they'll give me. I'll work my way up if I can. The group home helps us find apartments, but after that, he shrugged with the practiced resignation of someone who had learned to expect little. But Ellen wasn't just listening as a talk show host anymore. She was listening as someone who was about to facilitate a conversation between this remarkable young man and someone who had built a culinary empire on the foundation of recognizing raw talent, regardless of where it came from. "Marcus," Ellen said, standing up from her chair, "there's someone here who's been listening to our conversation, someone who knows exactly what it takes to succeed in the culinary world, and who has spent his career finding diamond-in-the-rough talent." Marcus looked confused, hope and disbelief warring on his face. Someone from the culinary world. Ellen walked toward the wings of the stage, and the studio audience began to buzz with anticipation. They could sense something massive was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ellen announced, her voice carrying across the studio with unusual gravity, "please welcome someone who has built a culinary empire on recognizing extraordinary talent, Gordon Ramsay." The studio exploded. 300 people jumped to their feet, but this wasn't just celebrity excitement. This was recognition of someone whose reputation for excellence was matched only by his surprising capacity for mentorship. Ellen was watching Marcus, who had gone completely still. His mouth fell open, his hands gripped the arms of his chair, and then his eyes filled with tears. Gordon Ramsay walked onto that stage carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had conquered kitchens around the world, but he wasn't carrying his television persona. He was carrying something more powerful, the focused intensity of a chef who had just recognized exceptional potential. "Marcus," Gordon said, his voice carrying that distinctive authority that had made him legendary, but softer than anyone expected. "I've been watching your videos for weeks, and I need to tell you something. You don't cook like a 16-year-old. You cook like someone who understands that food is love made visible." Marcus couldn't speak. He was shaking, tears streaming down his face, staring at the man whose restaurants he had studied, whose techniques he had practiced in group home kitchens with second-hand equipment. But this is where the story becomes something nobody expected, something that would change not just Marcus's life, but how the culinary world thought about untapped talent, about second chances, about the responsibility that comes with success. Gordon didn't sit down. Instead, he walked directly to Marcus and did something that no one who knew his television reputation would have predicted. He knelt beside Marcus's chair, bringing himself to eye level with this teenager who had somehow mastered techniques most culinary students struggled with. "Marcus, can I tell you something? I've been in this business for 30 years. I've trained hundreds of chefs, worked with the most talented people in the world, but watching your videos, seeing how you transform basic ingredients into something extraordinary with nothing but skill and heart, that's the rarest thing in this industry." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching two people, one a global culinary icon, one a foster teen, connect over their shared understanding that cooking is both craft and calling. "I know what it's like to come from nothing," Gordon continued, his voice carrying an unexpected vulnerability. "I know what it's like to fight for everything you get, but Marcus, you've got something that can't be taught. You've got soul in your cooking. You cook like someone who understands that a meal can be the difference between feeling alone and feeling loved." Gordon reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something that made Marcus gasp. It was a printed screenshot from Marcus's viral video, but it had been annotated with detailed notes about technique, creativity, and potential. "I've shown your video to my head chefs, to culinary instructors, to food critics. Everyone says the same thing. This kid doesn't just have talent, he has instinct. The kind of instinct that makes great chefs." But Gordon wasn't finished. He looked at Ellen, who nodded, then back at Marcus. "Marcus, you said you want to go to the Culinary Institute of America. Well, I've got news for you. You're going. Full scholarship, room and board, everything. Because talent like yours doesn't wait for permission." The audience erupted, but Gordon held up his hand. "But that's not all. After you graduate, you're coming to work in my kitchen. Not as an intern, not as a favor, as a chef. Because I want to learn from you as much as I want to teach you." Marcus was sobbing now, but they were tears of disbelief, of dreams that had seemed impossible suddenly becoming inevitable. "And Marcus," Gordon continued, his voice dropping to something more personal, "that restaurant you want to open for foster kids, I'm going to help you build it. Because the kid who learned to cook in 8 different kitchens, who turned food pantry ingredients into family meals, who understands that cooking is about caring, that kid is exactly who this industry needs." The studio audience was on their feet again, but this time the celebration felt different. This wasn't just applause for a generous gesture. This was recognition of something rare, potential being not just recognized but elevated. Ellen stepped forward, her own face streaked with tears. "You know what, folks? This is exactly why we do this show. Not just for the entertainment, but for moments like this. Moments when we remember that extraordinary talent can come from the most unexpected places. She turned to Marcus, who was still holding Gordon's annotated screenshot like a treasure. Marcus, you said cooking makes you feel like you're giving instead of taking. But sweetheart, you've been giving all along, giving hope, giving care, giving love through every meal you've made for your foster family. The show ended with Marcus, Ellen, and Gordon in a three-way embrace, but the image that would be shared millions of times was simpler. Gordon Ramsay, one of the world's most demanding chefs, kneeling beside a 16-year-old foster kid, both of them understanding that the best cooking comes not from perfect technique, but from perfect heart. 8 months later, Marcus Thompson was enrolled at the Culinary Institute of America, with a full scholarship from the Gordon Ramsay Foundation. His first semester grades were outstanding, but more importantly, he had found his tribe, other students who understood that cooking was both art and necessity, passion and survival. Gordon kept his promise about mentorship, visiting Marcus at school and staying in regular contact. "This kid teaches me something new every time we talk," Gordon said in a recent interview. "He reminds me why I fell in love with cooking in the first place, because it's how we take care of each other." The restaurant Marcus dreamed of is now in development, a collaboration between the Gordon Ramsay Group and several foster care organizations. It will serve as both a fine dining establishment and a training ground for young people aging out of the foster system, proving that Marcus's vision of cooking as salvation can scale to change hundreds of lives. Ellen keeps a photo from that day in her dressing room. Gordon kneeling beside Marcus, both of them crying, both of them understanding that talent recognizes talent regardless of circumstances. Every time she looks at it, she remembers that her platform's greatest power isn't entertainment, it's opportunity. And Marcus? He still cooks with the same passion that made him viral, but now he does it with world-class training and unlimited possibilities. The thrift store button-down he wore that day has been retired, replaced by the chef's whites he earned through scholarship and skill. But he keeps a photo from his group home kitchen on his dorm room desk, himself, stirring that pot of family soup, learning that cooking was how he could love people even when he didn't have much else to give. Because that's what Gordon Ramsay, Ellen DeGeneres, and Marcus Thompson taught the world that day. That extraordinary talent doesn't come with perfect circumstances. It comes with perfect heart. That the foster care system doesn't just produce kids who need help. It produces kids who can change the world if someone gives them the chance. And that sometimes the best chefs are the ones who learn to cook, not for fame or fortune, but for the simple reason that everyone deserves to feel cared for. The family soup that Marcus made in that group home kitchen has been added to the menu at 3 Gordon Ramsay restaurants, not as charity but as recognition, proof that great cooking comes from great love, regardless of where that love was learned. Share this story if you believe every child deserves a chance to chase their dreams. Comment below if you've ever found your calling in unexpected circumstances. And remember, talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to see potential where others see problems. Because in the end, that's what happened in that studio that day. A teenager who had been shuffled through 8 homes found his permanent home in a kitchen, all because 2 people chose to see his ingredients as possibilities rather than limitations. The foster care system couldn't contain Marcus's dreams, and now those dreams are feeding the world, one perfectly seasoned dish at a time.